आप सुन रहे हैं संवाद V4U रेडियो और हाई कमिश्नर श्री संजय कुमार वर्मा के साथ।
नमस्कार दोस्तों, दिस इज V4U रेडियो। मैं हूं अनुपम और अभी आप सुन रहे थे पिछले एपिसोड में संजय कुमार वर्मा जी आर ऑनरेबल हाई कमिश्नर ऑफ इंडिया टू कनाडा, और बात चल रही थी इमिग्रेशन इश्यूज पर। एंड सच ग्रेट स्टैटिस्टिक्स हैव बीन शेयर्ड एंड बातों का सिलसिला जारी रखते हैं। आज हमारे पास क्वेश्चंस बहुत है, इसलिए आई थॉट टू डिवाइड दिस होल conversation, the Samwaad, in 2 episodes on this one. संजय जी, आप कैसे हैं?
बहुत अच्छे, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर कनेक्टिंग अगेन। और आपके जितने भी श्रोतागण हैं सबों को बहुत बहुत बधाई, और मैं आशा करता हूँ कि आज जो बातचीत होगी वो उनके लिए यूजफुल होगी।
थोड़ा सा लाइटर नोट पे शुरू करते हैं संजय जी। एंड अगेन दिस इज जस्ट आई ऑलवेज रिमाइंड माय ऑडियंस दैट आई यूज माय ऑफ कोर्स माय मदर टंग इज हिंदी। अच्छा लगता है बात करने में उनसे जो बोल सकते हैं हिंदी, इसलिए बीच बीच में हिंदी में बात करता हूँ। बट आप भी एक तो यू आर न्यू टू कैनेडा, आप पूरे विश्व में घूमे हैं। यू हैव वर्कड इन ऑलमोस्ट मोर देन 10 to 15 countries. However, as a new to Canada, how did you find the Canadian climate? ठंड कैसी लगी आपको यहाँ पे?
ऑटवा में तो ठंड अच्छी रहती है
जी।
और चूंकि मेरे विश्व भ्रमण के दौरान मैं अलग अलग देशों में रह चुका हूँ और कई देश गर्म थे, कई देश इसी के जैसे ठंडे थे, तो खुद पर तो उतना असर नहीं पड़ता है। लेकिन एक आम भारतीय, वो भी बिल्कुल नॉर्थ इंडिया से अगर आकर यहाँ पर चला आए तो इस ठंड में उसको शुरू में तो परेशानी होगी।
जी बिल्कुल, क्यों मैंने कहा कि आई ऑलवेज वार्न सम ऑफ माय फैमिली फ्रेंड्स हु आर, इट्स नॉट वार्निंग बट कॉशन होता है कि दे हैव टू कीप इन माइंड चेंजेस कई तरह के होते हैं। इमिग्रेशन से बहुत जुड़ा हुआ टॉपिक है ये कि व्हेन समवन इज स्टेपिंग आउट ऑफ द कंट्री, ही इज स्टेपिंग आउट ऑफ द कंफर्ट जोन एंड ही शुड बी रेडी टू अडॉप्ट many changes. Season change is one of them. The climate change, it's almost 50 to 60 degrees plus and minus kind of thing. This is the type of weather change you notice. Along with that, of course, the culture change, work life, जो different work styles यहाँ पे, work change, and then adaptability is one of them, where I feel that as an Indian, when I was growing up, this is something which was never taught in any books, but I think our society prepares us to be adaptable. We are very adaptable. इस बारे में आप बताएं कि this is where I think Indians have got a good advantage over other nationalities.
Sure. The first thing is that, moving to a new country is life changing, and therefore it is very important that when someone moves to another country, and so much from India to Canada, they are far apart, very very different climatic conditions. They have to understand where they are moving and what they are up to. Because if they are not aware of their destination in all details, chances are that initially they will find it difficult to get adjusted to the new life. As far as the diversity in India is concerned, you know it very well. We have so many languages, so many foods, so many attire, so many festivals, and we seem to transition from one group of cuisine to the other group of cuisine, to one group of attire to the another group of attire seamlessly. So any Indian going outside India will remain Indian at heart, I'm sure, but at the same time assimilates into the society where he or she reaches, and through that they are able to be productive much faster, productive in the economic sense, much faster as compared to some other immigrants who will find it much more difficult to get adjusted, accommodated to the new culture.
Sanjay ji, in the last episode you mentioned about the mobility agreement and also started talking about a little bit about how the dual degrees and all that. And I want to it's a good segue for me to start this formal conversation with you on that side. See, when I came to Canada 18 years ago, I wish that certain degrees were recognized in Canada. And sometimes international credentials are not recognized. Again, it's a sovereign, and as you rightly mentioned in your last episode, it's a sovereign decision. However, there are many professions like law, medicine, even accounting to an extent. But now I think gap has come in to take a little bit of fill the gap there. And I see a lot of Indian doctors, Pakistani doctors who are coming here. But let's talk about Indian in that perspective. A lot of Indian qualified professionals who in the initial days have to deliver pizza because they have to for survive. So let me start talking about that way. You were talking about the dual degrees and all that. Does mobility agreement is working towards making sure that there is these types of things are also addressed for a easy access and easy immigration?
So MRAs, which are known as mutual recognition agreements, they are a part of various agreements, and these discussions are continuing. So if you see that there is a graduate in, say, mechanical engineering from one of the Indian institutes of engineering who comes to work in Canada, there will be no problem in transitioning. But if he or she is a medical doctor, there will be a certification issue. He or she is a nurse, certification issue. He or she is a driver, a certification issue. So there are some disciplines where the certification issue is not that visible, and the transitioning is very smooth. There are others where the certification issue becomes an important aspect of the mobility. So those domains in the mobility will certainly be under discussion, and this agreement discussions have just started. It takes time to conclude them. Similarly, there could be a possibility, and this is something I have been checking with my Canadian friends, Canadian counterparts. If there is a certification examination to be conducted for allowing people to practice their profession in Canada, can the same certification exam be conducted in India for those who want to come to Canada for that profession? What it will do is, it will allow people to stay back in India while taking the certification exam, as it is done with USMLI, the medical certification for the United States, medical certification for UK. There are few other countries which are conducting certification exams, includes Japan as well, in India for various verticals. If that can be done, if a driver who wants to come to Canada, and Canada has the requirement of drivers, gets to pass the Canadian driving license test in India, after all it is a vehicle and a road, then what happens is that the day on which he or she lands up here, from the next day he or she is productive in the Canadian context. Otherwise, the person will have to sit idle for a year, and as you rightly said, sell pizza if he's lucky. Otherwise, he'll be doing much worse things. So the person would come here, sit idle for a year, then take the exam. God knows whether the person will be able to graduate in that exam. If yes, then the person starts working. If not, then what happens? So it is much better to have as many certification exams possible to be conducted in India for the Canadian exams, and similarly the Indian exams in Canada for those who want to move from Canada to India in regulated professions, and therefore make it much easier for the mobility. So yes, when we talk of mobility and immigration, MRA is an important part of the whole discussion. Whether it will only be covered under the future mobility agreement, difficult to say, because they will be all over. Many of the labor issues are also discussed in other similar agreements. So there could be various places where this will be discussed, but the objective is the same, to smoothen the certification issue as much as possible.
आप सुन रहे हैं संवाद V4U रेडियो और हाई कमिश्नर श्री संजय कुमार वर्मा के साथ।
Sanjay ji, I mean, the business immigration, out of that whole immigration we talked about last time, business immigration is playing a very important role where investors are coming, and there are several. So I don't know if most of the people who are listening to this episode even know, Canada has been always known for its service-oriented economy, the service industries. But on the other side, we are a lot of manufacturing, agri-based immigration. I know recently you were in Saskatchewan and you rightly said, I was surprised when you told me that they are the largest trading partners for us. I never knew this, to be honest. But I know the Saskatchewan is agri-based economy. Can you talk something about the potential that province is having when you saw from some Indian perspective? Because India is also an agricultural country. 75% of the Indians still live in the rural pockets. So maybe can you throw some lights on that aspect?
Sure. So you mentioned about Saskatchewan. I was visiting the province and interacting with academia, research, innovation, businesses, think tanks, government officials, political leadership. And the basic thing is that there is a good juxtapose between what Saskatchewan has to offer and what India requires. Though we are one of the largest producers of pulses, we are also the largest importer in the world of pulses. Saskatchewan produces a lot of pulses, uses very little. So therefore, there is a good fit between Saskatchewan province and India. So pulses and lentils happens to be the largest exports from Saskatchewan to India. Then, as you rightly said, we are an agricultural country and therefore we would use fertilizers a lot. For chemical fertilizers, potash, which is potassium chloride, is a very important ingredient for us to produce fertilizers. We are one of the world's largest fertilizer producers as well. So we get the potash from Canada, from Saskatchewan in this particular case, and then do value addition in India to convert it into fertilizers to be used in India and also to be supplied abroad. We do export fertilizers from India as well. Given the way in which the fertilizer industry is moving into micronutrients, into microfertilizers, tomorrow, God knows, it could be nano-fertilizers. So when we move in that, then the consumption gets reduced, efficacy has to be increased. So these two commodities, Saskatchewan plays a very important role for India's imports from Canada, and that is why they are currently positioned as one of the most prominent exporting provinces from Canada to India. On the service sector, for a country as big as Canada, it's very difficult, I can say, to only rely on a particular sector. So economy will always be a mix. Canada had always been producing manufactured products for quite historically, a long time, which we see even today. So the items that we import from Canada are largely primary items, as we say. So pulses and lentils, the second largest, that is the second largest. The largest is coking coal, which goes into steel production in India for manufacturing. That comes largely from British Columbia. And then the next two largest items come from Saskatchewan, which is pulses and lentils, as well as potash. Then there are various other products in the entire matrix, which India imports from Canada. What India exports to Canada are mostly value-added and processed products. So my largest exports to Canada happens to be medicines, because India is world's pharmacy. So, and second largest last year was smartphones. So many smartphones in Canada actually were manufactured in India and then exported to Canada. My third largest one is also processed marine products. Much of the shrimp and prawn that people eat here has got some Indian imprint on that. So we do supply a lot of processed and value-added products to Canada, and we do import a lot of primary products from Canada. So it's a very rich import-export community which support this activity, and therefore there are many investors which are moving in both directions. So you have Indian investors coming here in capacity of individual investors or corporate investors. You look at HCL, Infosys, TCS, Tata Minerals, all of them are present here in big numbers. So if I look at all the information technology companies invested in Canada, and if Tech Mahindra, so if I put all of them together, they would be creating close to about 50,000 jobs in Canada. And these are high-paying, high-skilled jobs. So similarly, there are Canadian companies in India which are generating jobs in India and also helping in sort of building bridges between the two countries in the economic domain. So these things do go on. These things are largely market-driven. Governments only need to facilitate, create platforms so that they are able to be guided appropriately if they want to invest in each other's country.
In fact, when I came, and for a number of years, I felt that the immigration from India is concentrated from one particular region more than the rest. It was not uniformly distributed, but as the industry, this particular immigration industry is becoming, as I said, has an economic advantage and holding up the economy right now. I see, first of all, I'm sure you're also aware that thousands, not just hundreds, but thousands of immigration agents are working very hard every day in, day out to bring quality people to Canada. But the good thing is now that it's not just one pocket, but entire country. It could be the South India, it could be the West India, it could be from the East India. So what it means that this is something which makes me feel that yes, everyone should know about the opportunities. Now, you also brought the investors. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, not to promote any federal agency here, but I work very closely some days, and so Export Development of Canada. It's also one of the largest federal organizations, which is kind of bridging the gaps. And I know that you had some strategic meetings with these organizations as well. Do you? And again, my job is just to maybe see how much can I get from you. Do you also see that these organizations are working with Indian counterparts, like Indian big giants? Like we know that some of them control large economic activities. So is export development fully aligned with these big organizations, do you think, or there's a big gap you noticed?
See, there will always be some sort of gaps to fill.
Yes.
Industry will always move faster than the government. Anywhere, it's true for India as well. But there is a synergy. There is a synergy between the industry and efforts of the government on both sides to promote their economic activities, whether trade in goods, trade in services, whether it is investment as a foreign direct investment or portfolio investment. So all these things are supported by the two governments. So there exists a huge synergy on the economic aspects between the two countries, two ecosystems, which includes both the government and the industry. A point that you mentioned earlier of representation of India in Canada, popular representation, people's representation. I would say, Canada loves diversity. India offers diversity. And therefore, today what we see is that out of 3 million people, they are coming from all parts of India. They are coming from all geographies. In fact, the traditional geographies are growing slower in immigrating into Canada than the newer geographies.
Yes.
And these newer geographies bring in a lot of diversity. They bring in a lot of richness in their culture, lot of virality. So basically it makes the Indian diaspora look more vibrant, more diverse, more united at the same time. Because after all, for everyone who is coming from India, India being an Indian is an identity, and they carry that identity along. Whether they are Indo-Canadians, they are Canadians, they are Indians, they do carry that identity to different degrees, varying different degrees. So therefore, the immigration from India these days have a huge diversity from the point of view of geography, region, religion, languages, food, attire, which will finally make Canada more enriching.
आप सुन रहे हैं संवाद V4U रेडियो और हाई कमिश्नर श्री संजय कुमार वर्मा के साथ।
Very good point. In fact, it's so good to hear because as what we watch, and you rightly said, and I'm really amused to see when you said that industry will always move faster than the governments, of course, and it makes so much sense now. And no matter how far we have come from Stone Age to 21st century, but the Maslow's theory still stands true. You have to start with food, clothing, and shelter first. I mean, that's the basic. If that's not covered, you cannot go to the next level. And so, of course, when you migrate to a new country, you start from the basics, and that's where the diversity part says. That's why people could grow in clusters in terms of they find like-minded people, like-minded food, like-minded languages, and they start buying homes or living together so that there is togetherness. And then so I really see all those things happening here. And if you recall 30-40 years ago, Sanjay ji, I'm sure you'll recall the call center industries brought the countries together. There was some economic activity which found thing that by opening a call center servicing the client from India, and India had a lot of advantages in language and all that. So we saw a lot of call centers opening, but that brought the countries together. Do you see, and this is my last question for today, maybe something comes up, but do you see, I noticed that companies like McDonald's, they have opened up some kind of a vestibule or some kind of a training center in Philippines, and so that when people are moving from there, there's no culture shock. How close you think we are to that side where India could become like not a call center per se, but could be a training ground for corporates where they are training and bringing, and that, do you see at all any work towards that side?
I would say that this is already happening. There is no need to set up a training center for Indians to come to Canada.
Okay.
We are very well aware of the Canadian practices, and in the corporate sector, people move due to the skills that they have, due to the merits that they have, and anyone moving in the corporate sector gets the orientation by the company concerned before they move out. So therefore, I do not foresee sending from India to Canada a large number of people to work in such food retail outlets. We would rather prefer that Indians are able to contribute to the technology growth of Canada, and that will be our preferred way of immigration here. But again, it depends on the market conditions. Some of the human resources agencies which send Indian nationals to Canada in large numbers, they do organize orientation courses for their own group of people. So that is very much a practice in most of the places. For example, if people are going from India to Japan as nurses, all the nurses will get an orientation course done in India and for 1 month after arriving in Japan. So these orientations keep happening according to the industry requirements. There, I don't think the government will need to play a role. And most of the migration is in the white collar sector to Canada, where people are generally aware of what's happening around them.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to bring you on the forum, to have a conversation with you. We are talking about many issues, many things, good things and challenges in several sectors, several industries. So I first of all thank you and your office for having considered giving us so much of time and bringing you again. I want to tell my viewers that Sanjay ji is fond of one area of industry, which is AI and technology, and I want to use you to maybe do a full episode on that part, because you can certainly bring a lot of good things on the table. But also the second thing which you are fond of is cuisines, Chalo India. So I want to maybe bring those topics as well, because they are certainly the drivers where the bilateral ties can be strengthened, and this is the objective of the Samwaad with you, Sanjay ji. So first of all, thank you for talking to my audience in so explicit and so open way. I'm sure we are going to benefit lots. But I would let you end the show, please, for me today as well. आप अपने दर्शकों को, अपने जो आपको सुन रहे हैं, उनको कुछ आप स्पेशल कहना चाहेंगे, शो का अंत करें.
Thank you very much, Anupam ji, and thank you, listeners, for your indulgence. And I'm sure that we'll be able to continue this line of episodes and interviews. If there are any specific queries that you have, as the host has rightly said, please refer it to him, and we'll try to weave the response to your queries into our conversation. Thank you very much once again. Have a nice day.
बहुत बढ़िया बात एंड किया, and my apologies, I should have given this. So for folks who are listening and have any question, please feel free to email us at v4u@v4uradio.com. Again, the email is v4u@v4uradio.com. संजय जी आने के लिए फिर शुक्रिया. हम जल्दी मिलेंगे फिर आपसे एंड तैयारी करते हैं अपने नेक्स्ट एपिसोड की. नमस्कार.
संवाद V4U रेडियो और हाई कमिश्नर श्री संजय कुमार वर्मा के साथ.
V4U रेडियो कभी भी